This week on Dig Me Out. With your hosts, Jason Zia and Tim Manici.
Jay, we're back again with another season of Dig Me Out, thanks to the Dig Me Out Union on Patreon. They have helped us make this happen for so many years by joining us at dmounion.com or digmeoutunion.com. Jay, this is season, count here, one of my fingers here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 15. This is the 15th season. That's
hard to believe.
Crazy. We've lasted longer than the XFL, the USFL, the Waffle, the World, or the World League of American Football combined.
NFL Europe.
Nice. Think about that. We have lasted 3 times as long as the Civil War.
Come on, we're a better investment than minor league football.
We are.
Or at least more dedicated.
We've spent more time on this podcast than anybody has ever spent on anything. And it shows by our vast reach around not only this country, but around this planet. And we're looking forward to episode number, whatever this is, 740 something, 50 something, season 15. And we're happy to have back to kick off the 15th season one of our longtime supporters and patrons, Mr. Whitney Beeler. Welcome back to the show, Whitney. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I think it was intentional that you made me the kickoff for season 15.
It made sense that if we're gonna launch this this brand new season, and someone who has such a solid record with their picks.
Oh, absolutely.
That we go with that, because either what's going to happen here is we're going to meet expectations and everybody's going to be like, Whitney batting 1,000, or someone's going to call it a turd.
How I'm going to deal with it if it doesn't work out for me,
I don't know.
Refreshing.
Is this movie going to start with an inciting incident that's unexpected, big explosion?
Mm-hmm. Yep, and then we're gonna have a Ghost Machina later on,
right?
And we're gonna have a rabbit's foot somewhere that's gonna make no sense, but we're gonna have to pursue it, and whatever. Besides all that, we're here to talk about records, specifically from the 1990s. On this podcast, you might know that last year we launched the 80s metal podcast. That will be coming soon. It's twice a month, but this is every week. And this week number 1 of season 15, Whitney, please share the album that we will be checking out.
I picked Hello Vertigo by Papa Vegas.
Papa Vegas. Now, how did you come to this record?
They used to have those listening booths in a store called Tidal Wave.
Okay.
And I don't know if that was a thing in Ohio, but that I remember that's how I found this record. I just was spending like hours listening to music in those kind of kiosks they used to have before we had all that cool internet stuff that was so easy to find music with.
How long did they have those?
What's that?
How long were those kiosks around? Because I know that the Virgin Megastore here in Columbus had listening booths, but none of the local record stores that I'm aware of had listening booths. And like
it wasn't very, they didn't have them
either.
for very long. Yeah, they didn't have them for very long, but I probably went in there every week and listened to stuff. They were probably like, would you buy something, dude?
My memory is they came up with the concept a little late.
Yeah.
Like it was, and then MP3s happened, and I was like, I guess we don't need these anymore.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. They got Napster now. It was, in 99. When did Napster come along? Beginning of the 2000s?
Very
half of the 2000s?
Early 99, 2000, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know that everybody was on it in 99. I think it existed by then. I definitely was not on it until like 2000, when because I can remember like the first stuff that I was trying to find was like, oh, Radiohead's got a new album coming out, like that sort of thing, like trying to find songs, and it's like, no, that's actually a band called Coldplay. I'm like, what? It was Coldplay.
Yeah, that's how. I'm sorry, it's not a very exciting story, but that's how I found it.
Jay, had you ever heard of Papa Vegas?
No, and I
Papa
have to
Roach?
admit that I confused them with Papa Roach. I didn't know rock and roll had space for two Papa
Oh,
No,
bands, but
hey,
absolutely.
buddy, there's also Papa Chubby.
Oh yeah, that's right. But that's POPA, I think, isn't it?
I don't
Let's not
know.
look that up.
I don't know.
I don't want to admit
That
to
was like a
knowing that.
blues guy, but he was around in the '90s as well. We actually spun him at our college radio station. It was like in this. I think it was in the same vein as like G Love and Special Sauce, but I'm probably wrong. Uh, and then the Mamas and the Papas. You've got that,
There you go.
and that's about it.
It's a little before
That's
my
all
time.
that's relevant to this discussion. I only remember this because I think this was in a poll earlier in some other season.
Yeah, I can add to that because Mike Bankhead just told me, well, it was in on the Patreon site.
Mm-hmm.
He said
mhm.
that he liked this album and he had chosen it for like a random 90s album pick.
He must have been the one who submitted it. Yeah, because it definitely went in. He said he put it in the hopper a long time ago.
Yep.
And I remember that and nothing else. I had no clue what this sounded like going into it. So probably should explain who this band were and where they're from and all that sort of stuff. A little history, if you will.
History of the band.
So Papa Vegas didn't start out as Papa Vegas. It was originally uh, Joel Ferguson and vocalist Joel Ferguson and guitarist Pete Dunning started playing together in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Um, they collaborated for a couple years. They went and did other projects. And Ferguson would play under the name Papa Vegas with other musicians. And then they ended up playing a battle of the bands. And Brian Vander Ark of a little band called the Verve Pipe heard them and said, I would like to sign you guys. I have a label I'm assuming after Verve Pipe got successful, RCA set him up with like A&R abilities to sign bands to a label that would be distributed through them. And that label um, was called Sid Flips. And so once that happened, Pete Dunning got back with Joel Ferguson, and then they got Scott Stefanski on drums and Mick Force on bass. At that point, they recorded their debut EP, Grounded, and that was released on Sid Flips, 5-song EP, 4 of which of the songs were, I think, earlier versions of stuff that ended up on the record we're going to talk about. And then they got hooked up with Don Gilmore to produce their full-length album. Tom Lord Alge, one of the Alge brothers or family, mixed it. And Hello Vertigo came out in April of 1999. And they did score a minor hit. Bombshell got to number 20 on the Billboard Modern Rock Tracks chart in 1999. When the album came out, they toured with the Verve Pipe, makes sense. And Jay, a little band called Kent, who you might remember.
Yeah.
And they were, they were under RCA in Europe. So I guess that's why they ended up touring with them. They had another single that was released, Something Wrong. Didn't hit as well as the first one. And then very quickly later, the band got dropped by RCA, March of 2000. So April of 99, they have a record out on a major label, and within 11 months, they are dropped by the label.
Yeah. It seems like that was happening a lot at this time. It's like
yeah.
just throwing stuff at the wall, and if it didn't stick immediately, they just would move on. It's kind of probably what started to really batten it. CDs not selling as well in the coming years started to destroy the industry.
Tons of bands getting signed, tons of bands.
Like, nobody got developed.
In their studio. Yeah, no development. So they separated. And then in December of 2004, they played a show at a big venue with the Verve Pipe, and then did it again the following year, December 2005. and they decided that they had all been doing different things, and they decided to in 2009, I guess, get together, but that was with Randy Tate on keyboards and vocals, and then Mick Force was not on bass. He was replaced by John Connors, not John Connor from the Terminator movies, but John Connors.
Yeah, here you go. That's what I thought. I thought it was him, actually.
I thought it was him,
Terminator
too,
guy.
which is really inconvenient that he had to keep running out of shows because the Terminator would come and try to kill him.
I thought Stefanski was. I thought Stefanski was the Cleveland Browns coach too.
Scott Stefanski.
So, you know.
That's his brother.
Okay.
That's Kevin.
All right.
Scott is the offensive coordinator now that they've fired Ken Dorsey.
Perfect.
Ken Dorsey fired 2 years in a row by 2 different teams. Just want to point that out. If anybody hires him, you know what you're getting.
The Bills really seem to be struggling now that they let him go.
Let him go. Yeah, exactly. So they ended up recording another record. In 2011, they released Gravity Wars on their own label called Shiver Music. Or I guess they were. Do you have that record, Whitney?
No, I don't. I don't think I've ever heard it, actually.
Well, that's what it says according to the Wikipedia. And
true,
I believe it's on Discogs as well. Whether they're doing anything else after that, I have no idea. That's where the wiki ends. And I did Google them, and there was not a ton of information. I mean, they've been in different bands, Miles to Mars, Molly, White Rabbit, and Barrel Bones. A bunch of names I've never heard of.
Wow.
I'm sure they're all local to the Grand Rapids, Michigan area, but not in terms of making to a major label like with RCA. So let's get to some comments over at our Patreon. We will share our poll results, worthy album, better EP, or decent single, at the end of this show. First, some people had some things to say. Adam Rogan said, I had not heard this before, but they immediately reminded me of the Verve Pipe. Now that makes sense because according to Wikipedia, they were originally signed and produced by Brian from the Verve Pipe. While it sounds generic on the surface, most of the songs actually have guitar melodies and flourishes that are pretty interesting. It's a worthy album, but I would trim it down to 10 tracks. Mike Bankhead said, I'm pretty sure I suggested this one for the Hopper at some point long ago. It didn't get picked. I love this album, and it was on the short list for my annual selection, but now I don't have to because someone else did it. Worthy album, great songcraft. Love the bass sound. I saw them several times on tour back in the day. They were running around that region, opening for fellow Michigan band, the Verve Pipe. Friendly guys.
Nice teamwork.
Nice teamwork. And keeping the Terminators at bay. Richard Waterman said, this ended up being disappointing in my wheelhouse, but it's very, very generic late 90s post-grunge. The album sounds good. Production, mixing, and instruments wise, there was some cool drum parts, but it's a bit too bland. Sorry, Wit. If you want something in this vein, then Shades Apart. Eyewitness was also released this year in 1999. That album blows us out of the water, hooks wise, especially. I believe we've talked about that record.
That was my pick.
Yeah,
that was my pick.
Yes, he's
my album pick.
He's coming back at you with your own pick.
He is. The guy's
throwing it in your face.
I think his brain just malfunctioned. Short circuit.
Inceptioned. Ian McIver. Oh, here we go. For 2025, I resolved to have more better EPs, aka Ian's worthy album adjusted for bias. I tried for this album. The voice turned me off and made this a difficult listen for me. Very much the same presentation from track to track. While the band is competent, the uniform sound, a typical late 90s. He said 14 track. I think it's a 12 track album. Leading to an hour listen was a slog for me. Decent single. 2025 resolution didn't last a day. Sorry, Gavin. I don't know what to tell you. We'll work on. Can you have other resolutions? Like everybody says, like lose 15 pounds. Can we help you with that? Get into the gym more. Those sorts of things. Those are the things people always say. Cut down on their carbs. Go on more date nights. Typical.
It's a bit odd.
Typical. We can't actually help with any of that, but those maybe you can switch those out. Gavin said, okay, I'm aiming to seek the positives in each album harder in 2025. So he's going to be more strict with his positives. And man, I tried hard with this, but it's not for me. He's a competent singer and the lyrics are fine. And musically, there are no problems, but that's it. There's kind of nothing at all. Sounds like a version of Our Lady Peace that has only one gear. So sadly, it's a single for me. Okay. Keith Miller said, one of the things I love about Dig Me Out is when I listen to a band that I've never heard before, and it turns out I know one of their songs. This happened again with this album. WICB used to play Sermon Underground all the time. I actually thought it was Catherine Wheel until today. Anyways, this album sounds like Simon Le Bon fronting a shoegaze-influenced alternative rock band. Definitely a worthy album for me. And then he added, also the name of this band makes me think they should be doing reggaeton. Yes. And Willie Dillon said, I don't really love his voice, but musically it's fine, if not a bit generic. And then you, of course, said it was a worthy album. So that's
I gave it away.
We don't get you
Spoiler.
So let's get into this record, Jay. We're going to talk about Hello Vertigo by Papa Vegas. Tell me one thing that worked for you on this album.
I like the guitar and both it's fairly subtle, but it's really, I think, clever use of textures, effects, tones, and also matching that with a lot of the vocal harmonies that are also kind of subtle. Like at first listen, you don't quite know what the layers are, but as I was peeling it back, I started realizing, oh, those are two guitars, and then there's a bunch of vocals like kind of layered in there too that are merging together to create, these big choruses usually. From a guitar standpoint, I think it's bringing a lot of the mood to the record. It's bringing a lot of I think the style as well. So it ranges from being a little failure-like, spacey, psychedelic, slightly, but still, very crisp and clean like Failure is, to, it's got a lot of, big chord choruses, have that late 90s. I don't know if it's Mesa Boogie or not, but it has that big guitar, sound. There's even some stuff on here that uses some really interesting effects on leads that I like a lot. Gives it some movement, helps it pop. The record starts with probably the best riff on the entire album, which is almost stoner rock-ish. If you just listen to the guitar riff and how the drums are laid with it, it's like this really heavy, kind of minor, but not overly metal sound. It's a really cool riff.
Keep it in the dark so long. Building something wrong here inside your arms. Building something wrong.
That kind of sets, I think, the tempo for the record. There's some great clean tones on here. Also, a lot of alternating between quiet and loud on most of these songs. You're getting a lot of range there, from cool picking parts to kind of staccato riffs to big chords. So, and just overall, I think it's a great sounding record. It's big. The drums sound big. It's punchy. Great separation, but it's not overly compressed. So you can notice, when I turn this up, it sounds significantly better, and it still sounds good. I mean, it sounds perfectly fine at a lower volume, but unlike records that are over compressed, when you crank it up, you actually get more out of the tones and more out of the songs. So, from a production, just overall listening experience, it's a great sounding record. So that's some of the stuff that I liked. How about you, Tim?
Well, like you, the production on this is pristine. Everything is just like kind of dialed in perfectly. I don't know enough about the guitar tone if it, to call out the amps type, but it definitely sounded familiar to the late 90s. Like I could go, this definitely has that like that sound of we kind of are alternative, but we're doing something slightly different that is a little bit cleaner, but then also adding some weirdness to some of these songs, which I liked. I didn't get much failure from this band. What I did get was like a band like Dovetail Joint, like a song like No Destination kind of had like a Dovetail Joint feel to me for some reason.
Look behind, all the world is blind. It's a waste of time. You were there when the stars all shined and it blew your mind. Every night is a sacred rite and a one-way ride. Traveling with no destination. Everything is always bringing you down.
Just though it just like a really competent power chord, hooky, layered chorus with either the guy is singing multiple parts or they have a backing vocal doing a harmony or something like that. It just had that like quality of craft that band had as well, which again I'm comparing it to another obscure band, but not that Failure's not obscure either. But like you said, there's a lot of really interesting guitar things happening. And like you, I was caught off guard on that first song because not only is it kind of stoner-esque, but when the drums start, they start sort of off the riff
Mhm.
and then they kind of lock into the riff. So it gives you this sort of weird kind of where is it go? Oh, okay, now we're on the riff. It doesn't have an exact lineup for the first couple of measure or first couple of beats, but then it catches on. That's definitely the coolest riff. It actually kind of gives you a not a distorted view of the record, but it never really gets as heavy as that. It gets big. They
Yeah.
definitely do some of those big chords that like I don't know if they're drop D or not. It doesn't sound like they're doing drop D. Maybe they're just like full bar chords or something. But there's definitely some like really big chord sounds, and that could be layered guitars as well. Like Mike mentioned, I'm glad he mentioned the bass player. The bass sounds really great on this record. You can hear it clearly. There's a lot of little interesting runs that the bass player does throughout the album, and I thought for the most part it's a record that is like sort of sneakily competent. Whereas if you just sort of throw this on, I think people have mentioned this in the comments. It might sound a little more homogenous, a little more generic. But I spent time both actively and passively listening to it, and that's especially when like the little guitar things that who is it that's doing those Pete Dunning, he does a lot of little interesting guitar things. Some are just like little notes, some of them are using effects, but that's where I think the the unique sound of what this band is really comes down to what the guitar player is doing on individual songs. So that's what worked for me. Whitney, you brought this record to us. What works for you on this album?
So the best thing about going last is that I'm just going to probably repeat a lot of what you guys have said. I mean, for me, and I know Jay touched on it, and he might have, Tim. I just think the choruses on this record, every single song has just almost every single song, I won't say everyone, has just an outstanding chorus. I mean, these guys write choruses like they're terrific choruses. I could go through the list and I can hum them in my head. Just, they're just very solid choruses, and the bridges. It's nice to hear bridges because songs don't just have bridges anymore, and it's cool to
Nope.
hear that. It's kind of a lot of where a lot of the guitars come out. It's those little flourishes. That's where you find those things. I love the production, and if you look at the records I've picked for this in the past, for your podcast in the past, everything's almost slick. I just like a production that sounds really well. It There's separation in the instruments. I can follow everything. It's not just this huge, just like it's just not this noise coming at you. I can pick things out. I can pick the bass out. I can pick the drum fills out. And this record's got plenty of that. It is mid-tempo. It's not, you're not going to get any kind of balls out rockers or anything like that. Production's very big sounding, a lot of rises, a lot of crashes of the music. It's very dramatic. The guy does sound like Simon Le Bon, so congrats to Keith Miller for pointing that out. He's absolutely right. For me, I had never noticed that in the past until he mentioned it on the Patreon comments. But one
Actually,
thing,
different comparison, and I'll get to it later.
what's that?
I have a different.
Oh, absolutely.
Comparison.
I saw somewhere online from years ago, somebody said that this also sounded like softer Big Wreck.
Yeah.
And I can also
I was
catch
gonna say
that, right?
Yep.
I can also catch that. I think some people that might not like the late 90s might find a way to compare this to like Fuel, or maybe people that don't like Jimmy Eat World very much or something.
Like Jimmy Eat World.
What's that?
Who doesn't like Jimmy Eat World?
I don't know, but those people are insane. But anyway, yeah. So I just there's been music I brought that's more traditionally power pop and stuff, and I would say this is very alt rock. I've seen a couple of instances where people have said, well, melodic rock was so popular back then. This was just another band to appease like the masses who love melodic rock. Well, it's like, what the hell's wrong with that? I think that's great, right? So if you like this kind of music, I think this is really a solid album. Production wise, the guys obviously have a lot of talent, and they write killer choruses and interesting enough verses. So there's not really there's a couple songs on here. Somebody mentioned that this could be like a 10-track record, and I would agree with that as opposed to 12. And I can tell you the ones I'd cut, but I'm not going to do that now in case we cover that later.
Wait
so anyways,
the version I listened to has 14.
Oh, okay. I have never, like I said, I've got the CD here, so I've never heard that.
It must be, is that streaming?
Yeah.
What are the last two songs?
Important and Never.
Okay, Never was on the EP that they put out, and I don't know what Important is, but those were not on. But I have the MP3s for this album thanks to the I Hate the 90s blog.
That's funny because Important is probably the most failure sounding song on the album.
So that was not on the original pressing of the record. Interesting. Okay, so that's
there is something about him, and I think I mentioned it. Like I do those little reviews on Rate Your Music, and because I'm a nerd that way. And it did. At first, it gave me a failure vibe years ago, and I never really got past it. But now that I'm hearing things like, "Oh, he sounds like Simon Le Bon," I'm starting to lose the failure connection already. So, but anyways, that's what I like about the record.
Okay. Jay, is there anything that doesn't work for you on the record?
I struggle with the vocal here. It's not a voice like you hear it and I immediately think, oh boy, I can't listen to this for a whole record. It's more, I guess it kind of reminded me of Anthony Kiedis.
Yes. Oh God, no, I don't hear
it. There was something about his tone. Now he can sing much better than Anthony Kiedis.
Yes.
Oh my God.
But his tone, and I think just maybe it's just the melody choices are just so safe. They just sound like something Anthony Kiedis would come up with. Like they're not adventurous at all or creative. It's pretty much just like, what the next line is going to be before it happens. Like there's nothing unexpected here. So I was struggling with that quite a bit. It doesn't elevate. The vocal does not elevate some of these songs. And I think if you're going to go with the soft, loud dynamic, which is the other big issue I have with this record, is like every song is the same flow. It's like either come in with riff or don't. get to the quiet part of the verse, which is always going to be bass driven and vocal, build up to the pre-chorus, start bringing guitars in, then go full guitars for the chorus, and then come back to the verse, get quiet again. Like the whole record is that formula, every single song, and it's kind of the same tempo. So like if you're gonna do that, then I really need the singer to like blow me away. And the vocals just don't blow me away, either from a performance standpoint or from a melody standpoint, which I think is more important to me. Of like, you know, the performance can be fine if you hit me with some amazing verses and some incredible choruses. I can get there, but they're sort of like very average. So I think that's a combination of the soft live dynamic, which is very predictable, with the vocals that are very predictable. I'm just wanting something weirder, like do something just a little bit like, and something that's happening on the guitar, which is sometimes saving it for me. And like the quirkiness is coming from some of the guitar sounds and parts. I just wish more of it was coming from the vocal and the melodies. Anything not work for you, Tim?
Yeah, I'll second that. I only really noticed the Anthony Kiedis comparison when it was quieter in the verses.
Mm-hmm.
When he got to the chorus, he can outsing Anthony Kiedis, which most people can.
Yep.
So it was only on like on the more mid tempo ish stuff or slower stuff. It reminded me like Scar Tissue or something when he's singing the quieter parts or Soul to Squeeze or something like that.
Yes. It's like when Anthony Kiedis like started singing like real songs.
Yes. It wasn't just like fibba dabba doo babba dibba da doo. Yes.
But he got all the yabba dabba doo stuff.
What a bong gong. Ding a dong.
So if I'm going to put my producer's hat on, I'm putting my hat on here. I agree with you on the production choices in terms of every song follows a very similar format. What they could have done is, for example, if you're going to have a verse that's just driven by bass, drop the drums out and maybe put in a little loop or some percussion, or don't do anything and just have the guitar player making weird sounds in the background with the bass line carrying it. I think the lack of dynamics from a starting and stopping standpoint is what kind of made me go, there's an element missing to this, and I can't quite put my finger on what it is. I think the drummer is very competent, but he does absolutely nothing that makes me go, oh, what was that?
Mm-hmm.
Like when I listen to the Failure record and you hear the beginning of Smoking Umbrellas and that drum part, and you go, holy shit, what is this?
Yeah.
There isn't anything like this. Like this could be the Verve Pipes drummer, who I'm sure is a very nice drummer and guy, but it sounds like a pop rock drummer as opposed to an alternative space rock drummer who would I would just like to hear a little bit more adventure from somebody else besides the guitar player, because the singer can sing. It's like the opposite of that. The singer can't sing, the drummer can't drum, the guitar player can't play. It's the opposite. They can all do it, but they're just like maybe it was, hey, we're making a major label record. We know the success that the guys from the Verve Pipe have had. We got to figure out like how to like really streamline this. There's not a single song over 4.5 minutes. Everything is concise. Everything has a big hook chorus with doubled vocals, and it just, as far as an album goes, if you play me these individual songs, I'm like, yeah, that's a cool song. But then listening to the whole record, it's like, oh, there's 12 of these songs in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And I just need one of them or two of them to just either get really slow and weird and quiet, or really loud and fast and weird.
Something to get you excited, right? Something to happen, a part, or some shift or change or something unexpected. I need surprises and a little bit of an excitement element, either through performance or some kind of songwriting choice.
Yeah, it's a very delicate line between I was gonna say, not between clever and stupid. No, it's a delicate line between like going for it and playing it safe when you're dealing with a major label, and I understand that. Like, you don't want to do something that's going to be, they're going to be like, this isn't radio worthy. This is almost like too radio worthy, especially for the time, because there was like so many of these bands that even if this is a little bit more original in some ways, it's, is it going to stand out enough in 1999 for people to, you know, discover it? And I don't know if this was on the Best Buy, you know, end cap where you could pick them up for like $8.99 as a special or not, but you know, it's it's in a sea of a lot of other bands, and it's hard to stand out in that big ocean. So that's kind of where I'm at. Whitney, anything that doesn't work for you on the record? I know you had a lot of positive things to say earlier.
Well, I mentioned that I hear you about the mid-temponess and the sameness of some of the songs. For me, this album has always kind of worked into like a groove, right? So I'm not listening to this record to listen to not listening to this record to listen to like you know, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap followed up by like you know, Reunited or something. I'm not looking for two different, I'm not looking for a ton of variety from this band. I mean, I like the track list. I think that I could say Mesmerized and Long Days, which are the fourth and fifth track on the record, are attempts at doing something different. Unfortunately, they're both a little more ballady, which I'm not a ballad guy.
Seem to get there, seem to try, but it always is a lie. Rusted water into wine, now it's eating you alive deep inside. Let it out, bet you can't. I am lost tonight, mesmerized, mesmerized tonight.
Yeah, I just like the groove this album settles into. I hear you about the vocals. The more people talk about the vocals of this band, the more I'm starting to like kind of go along with. I'm not gonna really probably catch the Anthony Kiedis thing anytime soon, but but
You're gonna hear it.
I guess I can hear it now. I can hear the Simon Le Bon, right? Yeah, so I guess for me, I could probably go for a little bit more variety with the record. But other than that, I don't really have a. It's just I've heard this record so many times,
Right.
that it just settles in your brain, and you're like, oh shoot, let me think differently about this record. So yeah, for me, I think the production can probably be a little bit too slick for some folks. You said there was not a lot. I said it was dramatic, and I think you guys said it needed to be a little more dynamic.
Yeah.
So I think that's a difference. And I think that this is very, to your point, Tim, about production. There's no question that this is probably very calculated to hit the radio as hard as it can. And it just didn't work out because, like Jay mentioned earlier, everybody was signing a band for like 6 months and then cutting them, which sucks because I think if I look at most of the albums I've recommended to you guys, I think they probably all follow that same they all have the same history. So yeah, other than Wonder Band, I don't know where that one came from, but anyways, yeah, so I can see what you're saying. So for me, I would like a little bit more up tempo in places, but there's not enough tracks on this album that I would cut to be like, oh, you know, I need another 10 minutes of balls out rockers. I just don't need that from this record.
Right. I mean, to be honest, the original album being 12 songs, about 45 minutes, that's pretty conservative for 1999.
Yeah, for late 90s, yeah.
I mean, they could have made this 16 songs if they wanted to, and it would have been right in line with what was coming out in the late 90s.
If you discover it on streaming now, that's what you're getting. You're getting
right.
a 14 track album that's 53 minutes long.
And they don't mark them as like bonus tracks or anything.
No,
Huh, that's interesting.
it doesn't say like extended version or nothing. It's just Hello Vertigo.
That seems like a
Yeah, I
bad
have.
idea to just change the original release without really saying anything. Because what if you went and bought the record and then you're like, wait a minute, there's songs missing.
That frustrates me to no end. I mean, for the
Yeah.
most point, I don't want remastered albums. I want to hear albums as they were originally intended. I don't want to hear remastered albums, and I don't want to see 10 extra tracks on something. I just.
Well, Jay's gonna fight you over the replacements remasters.
That's
All right.
those are remixed too. They're amazing.
Those needed to be. Also, somebody needs to do that to the Husker Du album catalog.
Please.
Those sound terrible.
Somebody
I don't care.
needs to remaster Kiss Hotter Than Hell for me.
There you go. See?
Jesus, that album sounds like crap. Anyway.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
The song Something Wrong, I think, is the first track of the album is just for me, a great illustration of like what they could do more of and also like what's not working. So that song starts off, that riff is just killer. Those drums come in, you're like, F yeah, where are we? Like, this is going to be an amazing ride. And then it all ends. It's like, cut the riff, bring in the singer, and now all of a sudden it's like, record skips.
It makes you wonder.
Like, where did Anthony Kiedis come from in Flav? Like, why am I listening to a bass and singer? Where did that amazing guitar riff go?
It just makes you wonder how much control like the lead singer had. You know what I mean? How much of, was it 90% him, 10% of the band that got the final say on things, or how things went as far as song construction goes?
I don't know. I mean, it was
did he write most of the songs? I don't know.
Popular formula at the time to write songs this way, but
he
let's
wrote
do it now. That riff is just like, yeah, this is killer. And then that's it.
I think everything was written by Joel Ferguson, the lead singer, guitar player, except Sermon Underground was co-written by him and Pete Dunning.
Okay.
So that, I mean, it's interesting because when you think about, we've had experience being in a band, and when you think about like if the guitar player singer brings in a song, a lot of times it's like they're playing on an acoustic guitar at home and it's chord based and it's not going to be rhythm based because most lead singers have not been drummers. And you can kind of hear when the lead singer's been a drummer because they play with rhythm a little bit more. You can hear that with like Dave Grohl. Dave Grohl does some weird stuff with his guitar playing because of the fact that he used to be a drummer. So he'll throw in things like Odd Times, what is like Times Like These and Monkey Wrench, and all those songs have like little weird hiccups in, I think actually Times Like These is like 5/4 or something like that. Point being, I think you could probably strip all these songs down to an acoustic guitar and hear them as demos, and they probably, in terms of format, would not be that much different. And maybe they built it up on that. And maybe that if that's the way, I could be completely wrong, and I apologize to the band if I'm assuming anything here, but that's my experience, so that's what I'm thinking. But yeah, it is a really interesting record in that respect, because it's like they were aiming this at K-Rock and the big radio stations in terms of some very catchy alt rock for 99. I'm assuming this was made in like 98 because the EP came out in 97, so they probably spent 98 re-recording some of the songs and then recording the new material. So yeah, I'd be interested. I know that actually there was when I was doing some research after I listened to the record, there was a podcast. It's like 2 hours long. I didn't listen to it, but I sampled like a few minutes here and there, talking to one of the members of the band about making the record. And I didn't want to taint my opinion of the record by listening to it and anything like that. So maybe I'll go back and sample some of it. But
yeah, that sounds interesting.
It's either Joel Ferguson or Pete Dunning. One of those guys is who's being interviewed. So we already talked about this coming out in 99 with the glut of albums. I mean, they got to number 20 with the single, which is not bad. You probably needed the second, whatever the second single. What was the second single? Something Wrong.
Yeah.
Probably needed that to be a top 5 hit for them to get another record out of MCA, which is a shame because I kind of think they could have done something interesting. Like there's an interesting palette here, and I would be curious to know what they were going to do. Like, would they go a little heavier on the next record? Would Something Wrong, that big riff, be like an indicator of like, oh, we can do something a little bit bigger sounding, or would they have refined it down and gotten a little more poppier and not gone as big? Be curious to know.
I wonder what that Gravity Wars EP sounds like. I've never taken the time to hear it. It came a dozen years later, so
Yeah. So let's go to our final ratings on this record. Worthy album, better EP, or decent single? We'll share the poll results in a moment. But Jay, where do you land on this album?
Well, I'm going to land at a better EP. Two of the songs from my EP would be two of the songs that weren't even on the original album. So Something Wrong, Reason Without Meaning, No Destination, Through to You, and Sermon Underground, and then Important and Never, which apparently were on the EP. We were maybe re-recorded for this. I don't know, but that's where I would land. Trying to find stuff that has a little bit more edge to it or variety, dynamic, some standout guitar parts. That's kind of what I'm attracted to, I think, on this record. Where'd you land, Tim?
I'm also in an EP. I like Bombshell, that second track.
Once again, the bombshell is closing in. We pretend the distance is half our defense. In the end, you figure it out more or less. Still, I guess you catch what you can, 'cause the change is at hand, and you can't really plan where your feet will land. I
I'm surprised that wasn't bigger. That's a pretty darn catchy radio song. I could hear that on, your commercial radio station in 99, 97 or 99.7. The Blitz would have played it. CD 101 here, which was the alternative indie station, would have played it. Like
It kind of sounds like the Our Lady piece of this era, right?
Yeah, it does. Like if those, I know that those stations were playing like Superman's Dead and the stuff from the second record, so it's not that far off from that. So I would take Something Wrong, Bombshell, Reason Without Meaning, No Destination, Sermon Underground. Was that five or six songs there? So that would be my EP. Whitney,
yes.
you're not going to go back on your Worthy album, right? You already said Worthy.
No, I'm not going back on my Worthy album. Like I said, this album settles into a groove for me, and it's just something I put on and I can listen to all the way through. Although, if I was going to cut things, I would probably cut Mesmerized, and I'd probably cut Beautiful Animal. I think something that people do a lot, and I keep looking at, I'm looking up at screens here, you guys. I'm sorry, I'm not staring directly at you.
That's okay.
Probably loses something when you're not watching it on YouTube or something, huh? But this record is like really got like actually high ratings from people. I mean, on like RWAM, there's like 22 ratings of it, and it's 3.66. And I see 4.5-star ratings from 3 whole people on All Music. I've got a couple of examples of good reviews. So, there's obviously people out there that like this record a lot. For me, the record really doesn't. It kicks off strong with Something Wrong, right? That's a great song. And Bombshell, I'm okay with it. Super Telepathy is a good song. Long Days, Reason Without Meaning. But for me, once it hits track 9, the last quarter of the record, Through to You, Sermon Underground, which is the best song, On Your Own, and Resolve are terrific record. That's a great, I mean, those 4 songs are great. And if you just listen to those 4, that's a nice little EP for you. But for me, there's enough to add, where I've got at least 9, 10 songs that make this a worthy album to me.
All right. Well, Whitney said a worthy album. We're both at better EPs. Let's see how the union shook out. Coming in last place was Us, Jay, better EP at 22%. Second place, Decent Single with 33%. Worthy album, 44%. So the majority of the union
Polarizing.
agreed, but this was a very split vote. 22, 33, 44, which when I do the math right there, does that equal 100%? No, it doesn't. There's 1% missing out of that. Where'd that 1%, Jay, go? Where is it? We're owed another 1% of
Dark
our
matter.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess when you have an odd number of votes, it starts to mess with the calculations.
The old math.
I could say this might be this might be the most like popular album I've ever brought to you guys. I was looking at a list of the other stuff I brought. Maybe Caviar, maybe might have been more popular. The Fig Dish Offshoot or Shades Apart, maybe.
I feel like Shades Apart has like sort of a following because they were linked to like the punk scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, what can we say? We are contrarians sometimes to popular opinion. Just ask Jay about Neutral Milk Hotel or Slint, or ask me about Seaweed.
I'm not big on either one of those either. Seaweed, definitely not.
But if you
I'll put all my opinions out there right now.
Yeah, let's just start naming things we don't like and really piss a lot of people off.
Hey, I only get one time a year on here for sure. So I would say last year you guys shocked me when you liked Love Nut, that Baltamucho as the album. I thought, well, these guys are going to shoot holes in this thing, but you both liked it. So, I had to swing and miss eventually. So,
hey, even Ted Williams missed a few pitches. So
we'll still you both gave it better EPs. If you'd said Decent Single, that would have been a problem for me.
I feel like if either of us had said Decent Single, we might have gotten reprimanded.
Yeah, we might have. Well, it's almost like I tried to scold you for Joe Satriani.
Hey, now, come on. That's a totally different thing.
You're right.
That's much more divisive than this. I mean, this is and I agree with you. Like for Christmas, one of the things I did, I gifted myself with a gift card some new Acro Mills, which I don't know if you're familiar with Acro Mills, but they make like storage units for like, you would put it in your garage to store like, the little things where you store like nuts and bolts and nails and stuff like that. So I have like 5 of those in my basement for all my Lego.
Oh,
so I was just sitting at my table organizing my Lego in my new Acro Mills shelving, listening to this on repeat. And it was a nice casual listen. I agree with you that like as a passive listen, it actually works in some ways better because it just kind of flows and you're just like nodding along and then it stops and you go, oh, okay, hit repeat. Let's start over again.
There you go. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what's brought me to it.
And I did not get paid by Acro Mills to promote their product, but that's generally the product that most Lego fans use when they want to store their Lego at home. And I want to remind folks that they can suggest records by joining us at Patreon, just like Whitney did. Whitney, thank you for joining us once again.
Yeah.
How many times has it been now? I have lost track. Is this like, are you 6, in double 7 digits now?
This is my 8th annual pick, but I've also done some stuff like Dada Sophomore Slump and
there you go
with Muse and some other stuff. So probably a dozen times.
A dozen
for someone who can barely play an instrument. That's pretty good.
A lot of people that are big in music. Rick Rubin can't play an instrument, as far as I know.
Really? Well, him and I are pretty much the same person. So
you're on the same. Yeah, you guys. You're both whisperers of music in your own way. You leading the power pop charge in our Discord,
something like that.
Which, by the way, the Discord is available for those of you who join us at Patreon. Patreon is where you go via dmounion.com or digmeoutunion.com to support the podcasts. Just today, we were having a rousing conversation about sport utility vehicles and pickup trucks around the world. And talking about the various sizes and shapes that they come in.
Like to compare notes with the Australians to see
yes, we'd like to know what's going on down there.
Their states are all screwed up. The reason why they have bigger states in Texas is they haven't taken the time to split them up.
Right.
And there's other stuff happening. Obviously, we talk about music and everything that's happening with new releases, old episodes or old albums that we're checking out, and news and all sorts of things. So that's where you want to go. Patreon to join the Discord. Also, you get, I just was mailing out a new, I was late mailing out a sticker for our union. I'm getting that out right now. We get a, you join the union, you get a sticker, or you can get a t-shirt or some other things, different levels.
We don't have t-shirts anymore.
Oh, we don't have sorry. What do we have now, Jay?
I bought a hoodie.
Merch wise, we're just doing stickers.
Oh, we're just doing stickers? Okay. All right, never mind on the t-shirts then. Maybe we'll bring those back another day.
I wish I had that hat that Jay is wearing. That thing's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jay, you need to get that on the
I know. It's on my list of to-dos.
I got the hoodie, but I'm getting fat, so it doesn't fit very well.
Well, if you'd like to, we can work on our New Year's resolutions like with Ian. I can suggest lose 15 pounds. I can suggest to go to the gym once a week. I can suggest
I'm not
I have
sure
all
why
sorts
I
of
said
suggestions for other people that I'm not going to do. No, I'm great at other people's new resolutions for the new year. Me, not so much. The Box newsletter at Substack is our weekly newsletter of new releases of 80s, 90s, and aughts relevant music, books, documentaries, etc. Every week, Saturday.
Everything's under Dig Me Out Podcast now. So if you want the newsletter, you just go to Dig Me Out Podcast. You'll see a form to sign up.
Everything
is
there.
All of our everything we're doing, both podcasts.
That's articles, right.
Everything.
I noticed that today as just a casual.
We have migrated. We have moved. The Dig Me Out website has changed. This might come as a shock to some people. So there's a new form for submitting.
Yep.
Excellent.
It's in the main app. It's called Save an Album. You can submit
you can save an album,
metal,
rescue
or
an album.
Rock in them. Rescue an album. Sorry.
Rescue.
I saw it like an hour and a half ago.
When you go to that page, does it trigger a Sarah McLachlan song to guilt you into donating? Or
the old SPCA thing? Yeah.
These old rock stars are going to be euthanized soon, unless you save them.
For only $1 a day, you can save Eve 6.
Angus Young. Angus Young. Oh yeah, he's still around.
Yeah.
I don't think he needs our help. He's doing fine.
So. I was thinking about the fact that the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders perform to Thunderstruck every game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, wow, AC/DC must get paid for that because they're using that in the stadium. And then I'm like, how many times has AC/DC played in a football stadium in a regular season in the NFL? Probably a lot. Probably more.
Welcome to the jungle.
Probably more than most bands get played on Spotify in an average year.
I want to know if Jack White is making any money from every marching band in the country playing Seven Nation Army.
Yeah, that's no kidding.
Interesting. Because it's a public performance, they might have to license that. Not if the crowd does it. Like if the crowd is just singing along, and it's over the speakers. But if like the marching band does that, because when like a school puts on a play, they have to actually purchase the manuscript or whatever.
Yep. And then all the music.
I don't know if you've ever seen any interviews with him about that, but he was on Conan O'Brien's podcast and he said that they like spent an hour on that song.
Crazy.
Like they almost didn't put it on the record. He had no interest.
It's just spontaneously, you hear the marching bands play it, but then you also just hear spontaneously the crowd start doing it.
It's wild.
Who would have thought? How could have you ever imagined when you wrote those notes that any Saturday or Sunday when you turn on the TV, you would just spontaneously hear people, marching bands playing it. It's
Or
wild.
people singing to Sweet Caroline or Country Roads every 5 seconds. Oh my God.
I don't need to ever
If
hear
I was
that
in a
country.
stadium and they played that, I'd
Well,
probably jump.
I mean,
out
more.
and jump over
I
that.
believe you more that Neil Diamond wrote that with the intent that people would sing it.
Yeah.
In bars and at parties and stuff. But I don't think Jack White ever imagined when he wrote Seven Nation Army that
Probably not.
Well, he said because they actually
after every touchdown.
they actually recorded, like they had somebody doing not a documentary, but was in the studio with them videoing everything, and they barely even recorded anything of that song because that's how little they thought of it when they were recording it. They were like, yeah, you can shoot a couple videos if you want, but this might not make the
Crazy.
record. So there's not even that much video of it. Well, there's video of other songs that they did. Just nuts.
Yeah.
Lastly, Apple Podcasts is where you go to leave positive feedback for the show. Although you can do that on Spotify now. Once you listen to the podcast, you can leave some positive dots or stars or check marks or whatever they do over there.
Dots.
So
Give us many dots.
yeah, point the dots in our direction. All right. For Jay, I'm Tim. We're out. And we'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.
Till you say